Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys how to make a rolled hem like the type made with a serger or an overlocker using your domestic sewing machine. Just like the one you're seeing in the video, I made that using my sewing machine. So if this is something you'd love to learn, then keep watching. Hello guys, welcome back. So this is a closer view of what a rolled hem looks like. I've made that on 3 different types of fabrics, on a chiffon, cotton and on a satin. I'm going to walk you guys through on how I achieve my results. This is my sewing machine. It's a Serger tradition. To make this hem, I use the buttonhole stitch length. So I set between 0 to 1 depending on how wide or small I want my stitches to be. So if I want my stitches small, I use 0. If I want it to be medium, I position it in the middle. And if I want it a little wide, I use number 1. Once I decide on my stitch length, and for this I'm using medium, so I'm going to position the knob in the middle. Then the stitch length, I'm going to use the longest length of the zigzag stitch. Then my tension is usually between 3 and 4, but for today's illustration I'm using 3. Another important thing is the choice of thread. The woven thread works, but you might need to run your stitches twice to get the thickness and the whole fabric covered. To get a good and better coverage, a thicker thread is needed. But in a case where you do not have access to this, you can still achieve a good result using your woven thread, but with extra work and time, meaning that you might need to run your stitches twice to get the thickness, or depending on the thickness you're going for. The sewing foot remains your normal sewing foot, and without further ado, let's put this into practice. Just a quick glance on the settings before we start, but I'll be putting the settings on the screen because my camera didn't get that very well. I've chosen 3 different types of fabric for this illustration: a cotton, chiffon and a satin. I'm starting first with the cotton fabric. I'm going to make my first stitches with the cotton fabric, and please, while you sew, do not pull the fabric. You can just ease it in gently. So guys, this is what the first stitches look like. Just take a good look at it, because I'm going to run a second stitch on this stitch for you to see the difference. While running the second stitch, it might be difficult for the fabric to move on its own depending on your machine, so just ease it in gently, but do not pull on the fabric. Here we are, standing on the edge of something brand new. This is what the second stitches look like. You can see it has more thickness and more coverage compared to the first. The beginning of the fabric is the second stitch, and I left the end with the first stitch so that you can see the difference between the two. So depending on the coverage you're going for, you can either make 1 stitch or you run 2 stitches. The second fabric we are working with is the chiffon. The first thing I do is to trim it and give it a sharp edge because they fray a lot. Then I'll roll the edge just a little bit like so. The reason I do this is to secure the thread on the fabric, and it prevents the thread from pulling off after stitching. I'll go ahead and make the first stitch, or is it stitches? Like I earlier mentioned, do not pull the fabric, just ease it in gently. This is what the first stitch or stitches look like. You can see it looks good already. You just go ahead and trim off any flyaways. You can also see how sturdy the thread is. even as I'm pulling on it, is not pulling off. So it's important you roll the edge of the fabric a little bit like I showed you to secure the thread on the fabric. So the last but not the least is the satin. I'm going to run the same stitch on the edge of the satin. So this is what the first stitches looks like. I'm going to run the second stitch to have more coverage. And here we are, it's looking much better. Like I earlier mentioned, the more stitches you run, the more thickness and more coverage. I'm going to run the same stitches on the other side of the satin, but with the edge rolled, just like I did with the chiffon. But first I'm going to give the edge, trim it off to give it a sharp edge.
Here we are, standing on the edge of something brand new. Don't know what you should know. I don't make any sense. My head and heart don't match up.
So guys, this is it. If you're using a thicker thread, you have more thickness, more coverage with lesser work with one stitch at a go. But whichever way you choose to do it, you will arrive at the same result. Do not forget to like, share if this video was helpful to you. Leave all your questions in the comment section and subscribe to my channel. A bientôt!